what it is all about, as Z mentioned. We wanted to look whether there's a feasibility for gradual land use, changes from fruit to vegetable production in the Goulburn Valley. That was the main idea to start this project. As we progressed from last year, June, to this point here for this presentation, we are close to finish our report for the project. And we not only looked for this option, but we also realized that it also offers new opportunity to consider in this area. Just quickly wanted to let you know that Goulburn Valley represents 25% of the agriculture production for Victoria, and 7% comes from the vegetable production. Another story which led us consider to look for this project as a pilot study was decline in SPC profit or loss of its market, domestic market, by 33% and 90% export market a couple of years back, very recently rather, which put GB fruit growers in a dilemma where to sell their products, because they had this sort of fixed market to grow their product to directly to do SPC. Then, considering the biophysical conditions of the area, yes, it's very suitable for vegetable production. However, it's not really taken up in horticulture industry as compared to fruit cultivation. So we thought worthwhile to consider this pilot study in collaboration with GTR, where Emmy, Melly, Megan, we worked as partners from with Melbourne University, myself, Brian, and Gayatri. I would also like to say Andrew Hamilton, who was my colleague when we started this project. He was the first person to believe in my idea to look for this project. He left university recently. Project was funded by DET-GTR, University of Melbourne Innovation Seed Fund. We started last year, as I mentioned. We studied area around Shepparton, where we interviewed 13 farmers, one from Melbourne, one from Goulburn, two from Arizona. We also thought it would be worthwhile maybe considering looking a bit outside from the GB region and to see what farmers or growers they think about this region as an opportunity if they want to come and look GB as one of the options for vegetable production. So we also interviewed one farmer from Werribee, one from Yarra Valley, one from Cobbs. The farmer from Cobbs is actually, he was doing a productive cultivation, and we thought like this is a future potential area as well, so it would be worthwhile to include those results for this report, and one from Gippsland. Here, just quickly, to summarize our results, as I said, like we have just come up with the first draft of the report, and there is a feasibility to improve it further, but still we would be presenting these results as has been shown in this flowchart. So we looked for the feasibility of vegetable production in the Goulburn region with three major domains. One, we wanted to see what are the biophysical factors which are suitable for this region to be considered for vegetable production. The vegetable production is already going in here, but with changing climate and more opportunities in the domestic and export market, and also with the technology coming in, how do we see it? We also look for economic factors and the social factors. The first two main sectors of biophysical factors and economic factors, the data was gathered from already published government reports. And for social factors, the interview, the questionnaire, which was prepared for interview, the data was collected from there. Coming to biophysical factors, yes, when it comes to vegetable production, we definitely need adequate water, which we are confident enough with the region that we have adequate water to support this industry. Average rainfall, average temperatures are quite conducive to think for expanding the area in vegetable production. Coming to economic factors, this is really an indicative average rate of returns for fruits and vegetables, which shows like definitely fruits, they give more gross profit per annum per hectare, which varies from $6,000 to $10,000, whereas in vegetable production, it goes per hectare per annum from $4,000 to $8,000. Here I would like to add a quick point that yes, it is true there's a difference between this indicative average rate. for the gross profit. But it takes a while to establish the fruit orchard, whereas in vegetable production, if a farmer decides to start something this year, by acquiring that land, he or she can just start the vegetable production in the same year. Coming to social factors, factors which contributed to think for farmers to diversify from fruits to vegetables, or to consider vegetable production as a first step towards entering into horticulture industry. Those factors were loss, as I mentioned, loss of contracts with the fruit cannery and unable to find new markets. Low initial investment, as I mentioned, it's really quick to start with vegetable production as compared to fruit or establishing an orchard. Then great flexibility to change crops. If as vegetable, the information we got from farmers, they said like, if they, for example, they are going with zucchini for the very first year, and it seems like the profits are not really high, or because of economical practices or one or the other reason, the crop is not doing good. Next year they can think about broccoli. However, that's a limitation with the, I would say, the orchards. Once you establish apple orchard, you need to stay with apples. And there's less flexibility to change even the variety in fruits, whereas in zucchini, for example, if you want to opt for one or the other type of zucchini, say you want to have early sown and early harvest variety, you can think about that. Or you want to capture a market where the crop is not really available a bit later, you can target that crop as well. Then no specialized skills are required. That's what we realized from the data gathered from the farmers. And we also realized that there's a support or mentorship from community available. This particular observation is coming from the migrating people here, especially the Indian community. They suggested that they have a close community linkage, and they can secure labor or the knowledge from the existing vegetable growers to start vegetable cultivation. It also gives more regular incomes, considering that in vegetable production we can have more than 2 crops in a year. And compared to food production, like you can just have 1 crop in a year, and it's very set market. However, there were barriers to diversify as well as these are the data recorded from the interviews from farmers. There's money locked in packaging dishes or cold stores, so fruit growers felt like they have invested a lot, and it wouldn't be worthwhile to think of switching immediately to vegetable production. There are fluctuating demands in markets. When it comes to vegetables, there's a crop ready to harvest, and they think like, no, the market is already flooded with the same vegetable there. So that fluctuation in the market is one of the limitations for farmers to think to diversify to vegetable production. Volatile prices and no transparency. Most of the farmers which we interviewed, though it was a small size, but most of them had this concern that the prices, they fluctuate a lot, and there's less transparency what they are selling and what they are getting from the middleman. Probably it is not very clear. Definitely there's a higher requirement of labor as compared to fruit on the orchards, and time and resource constraints was another thing which was considered as one of the barriers for diversifications. So what recommendations we would be giving from this pilot study? There's a need to create a level playing field for vegetable growers. Vegetable growers had a concern like the vegetables being imported from, especially from Asian countries. There are no quality control or those high standards, whereas for the vegetables grown in here, they need those high standards to be set for the vegetables. So it's hard for them to compete with that inflow of vegetables coming in. About education, there's a need to increase education around vegetable cultivation consumption and to buy local produce. And we also realize and we recommend that there's a need to provide right information for production practices. Whatsoever farmers are getting information here that's coming from the companies selling their seeds. So there are no demonstrations or research trials being done where we see our role, future role for towards this industry to provide more information, to have standard production practices for different crops for the farmers who would like to see themselves establishing well in vegetable production area. Transparency in markets, which probably governments and policies has to decide how they will make the market more transparent for farmers. And hydroponics, which is emerging field, has a lot of potential. However, the financial support, which would be really important because there are initial high costs to set up these protected cultivation greenhouses or hydroponic establishments, and they do require some training and skill development. New markets and new crops, especially exotic Asian vegetables, they have huge potential not only in domestic markets but also in the export markets. So these are the few recommendations which we have realized so far we would be giving to everybody whosoever can use it. Now, who will use these results? When it comes to industry bodies and support agencies, we felt like the name given in here, they would be the right agencies who can use these results. How? To provide relevant information to farmers and exploring new markets, as the recommendations or I was talking in my previous slides. Where we see as researchers ourselves standing with these results to look ahead. The University of Melbourne and other research institutes, we can address research questions where there are emerging possibilities in vegetable production in this valley. What are the new crops? What are the suitable agronomical practices? Suitable varieties, which is really important for to have a good harvest by the end. New market. Supply chain analysis and protected cultivation, as I said, like that's one of the future options probably to look for. For the service providers, water supply catchment authority to be aware about the changing demands of water due to changing cropping patterns. Corporate companies, they need to look for new crops, varieties, nurseries, plant protection products, fertilizers, farm machineries, irrigation systems, farm insurance, and agronomy services. To the farmers, to look, this report will let them know what are the current options of new crops for those who want to diversify or who want to take vegetable production as one of the options to look forward in the horticulture industry. Now, I think this is the most interesting part, and it always fascinates me to conclude who is actually and how, or what does it mean for the industry growers, and how will this work impact on the bottom line. So I think it's a bit of mix, or I would say like it was hard to separate it from the previous slide, but still thought of putting some thoughts in here. For growers, especially for farmers, as I said, who would like to diversify partially or completely from fruit production, or who would like to opt for to vegetable cultivation as their first step towards the horticulture industry. The potential vegetable crops grown in this area and new crops to be considered. However, I would say like it would be linked with the research being done by the research institute, so that they can pass their findings, and then it finally comes to the policymakers and the farmers to decide what they want to pick from there. Indicative cost of production and rate of return on the capital invested, as it was the information was drawn from the already published reports, but it's quite indicative with the minimum profits they're going to get from that will probably be one of the good indication, and also the barriers and risks involved before they want to step into this industry. For research institutes, yes, we identified potential areas for us to research, and these are listed here. I think one of them, which I haven't mentioned before, that's technology-driven climate smart production practices, which I think one of the part from Dongria's project, which was presented by Mark, would be one of the options to look into vegetable production. And to service providers, yes, there are the indicators of gradual land use change patterns in Goulburn Valley and emerging research areas. The important market requirement arising because of the changes in production from fruit to vegetables, or opting vegetables as another option. This is really important, getting on-site demonstration with institutes like us. I'm based at Dookie campus, so probably I would be really keen to look for more funding and do research towards this side. and farmer field demonstrations as well of crop varieties and water use and nutrient efficiency trials, which would give them confidence like, okay, now these are the practices which are there to look for better profit from their crops once they opt for vegetable production.